In this video, I will be talking about short-run cost curves and how to calculate different costs. This shows some of the costs that I will be calculating in this video. The total fixed cost, the total variable cost, the total cost, which is the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost, the average fixed cost. Anytime you see average, you know you're going to divide by output. So average fixed cost will just be the total fixed cost divided by the output. Average variable cost, that's just the total variable cost divided by the output. Average total cost, that's just the total cost divided by the output. Total cost, like I said a few seconds ago, is the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. The marginal cost, change in total cost divided by the change in output. But I'm going to talk more about each individual cost and how to calculate it coming up in the next few seconds. So this illustrates the different cost curves. You have the average fixed cost, the average variable cost, the average total cost, and the marginal cost. The average fixed cost is always going to be decreasing as you increase the number of output because you're dividing by an increasing number. So that's just going to be the total fixed cost divided by the output. Fixed cost is going to stay the same, but you're going to be dividing by an increasing number. Then you have average variable cost and average total cost. The average variable cost and the average total cost will increase once the marginal costs intersect, because the marginal cost is the additional cost per unit. So if the additional cost per unit is higher, then it's going to pull up those averages. The total cost, the sum of the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. So the total cost is the fixed cost plus the variable cost. The fixed costs that do not vary with output and are fixed for a certain period. So in the long run, all costs are variable, but in the short run, you have a fixed cost and you have a variable cost. Variable costs are costs that vary with the rate of production, such as wages paid to the workers and purchases of materials. So the total cost equal the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. Again, the total cost equal the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. So like I said earlier, anytime you see the word average, you're going to divide by the output. So the average total cost will be the total cost divided by the output. So it's also called the average per unit total cost. So the average total cost is the total cost divided by the output. Here you have the average variable cost. So that will be the total variable cost divided by the output. Here you have the average again. So the average fixed cost, the total fixed cost divided by output. So the marginal cost is the change in the total cost due to a 1 unit change in production rate. The marginal cost is the change in total cost due to a 1 unit change in production cost. So in order to calculate marginal cost, you're going to calculate the change in total cost divided by the change in output. Or you can call it the cost for each additional unit. So just another thing about marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in output, or the cost for each additional unit of output. Okay, so what is the relationship between production function and the cost curve? Over the range of output along which marginal product rises, marginal cost will fall. At the output at which marginal product starts to fall, marginal cost will begin to rise. The relationship between average and marginal cost: when marginal costs are less than the average cost begins to fall because the marginal cost is pulling it down. When marginal costs are greater than average cost, then the average cost begins to rise because the marginal cost is pulling up the average cost. remember the average cost is the cost for each additional unit of output. There is also a relationship between marginal cost and average total cost. Average total cost is equal to the total cost divided by the number of units produced. The marginal cost is the change in total cost due to a 1 unit change in the production rate. Now in this table, we're going to calculate the total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost. If you can recall that the total cost is equal to the total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. So at 1 unit of output, we know that the total fixed cost is $20 and the total variable cost is $5. So the total cost will be $25. At 2 units of output, total fixed cost is $20, total variable cost is $8, so the total cost will be $28. Now, we're going to calculate the average fixed cost. Recall that the average fixed cost is the total fixed cost divided by output. The total fixed cost at 1 unit of output would be $20. $20 divided by the output, which is 1. So the average fixed cost at 1 unit would be $20. Okay, so recall I said the average fixed cost is going to be decreasing as output is increasing. So at 2 units of output, the total fixed cost divided by the output would be $20 divided by 2 would be 10. Now calculating the averages for column 6 and column 7, average variable cost is just the total variable cost divided by the output, and the average total cost will be the total cost divided by output. For example, at 2 units of output, we see that the average total cost will be 14 because the total cost is $28 divided by the output, which is $2. 28 divided by 2 is 14. So we go down to 6 units of output. The average total cost is 36. 36 divided by 6 would be 6 for the average total cost. Now, in order to calculate the marginal cost, remember that the marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in output. So at 2 units of output, the change in total cost will be 28 because it's the change in total cost. 28 minus 25 will be 3. And then 3 divided by the change in output, which will be 2 minus 1. So that would be 3. So again, to calculate the marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in output. So this is a graph of marginal product and average product of labor. So notice where marginal product begins to decrease, we're going to see that the marginal cost is going to start increasing. So marginal product decreases, and since we're paying a constant wage rate, marginal cost will begin to increase. You are paying the same wage rate, but they are being less productive. So it costs you more per unit of output. We see the marginal cost begins to increase, pulling up the average variable cost. Okay, so remember that's the same place that the marginal product will begin to decrease. Firms' short-run cost curves are a reflection of the law of diminishing marginal product. Remember I just showed you the marginal product curve. The point where the marginal product begins to diminish, that's the point that the marginal cost curve begins to increase. Given any constant price of the variable input, marginal costs decline as long as the marginal product of the variable resources is rising. So at the point which diminishing marginal product begins, marginal cost begins to rise as the marginal product of the variable input begins to decline. Additional videos are posted below.